Welcome back, y'all. Street Academy
Hey.
Podcast. This is part 2 of our Father's Day series.
Let's go.
Yes. Where we have Matt, Jean, Jasper St Bernard. I'm Jackie. I'm excited about y'all.
It was good. It was such a good conversation. Like, they're both so introspective that I think that conversation is just like really good. It's gonna leave people thinking for sure. For sure.
And also have your tissues ready, because you might need to pause for a moment as you start thinking about some of your own experiences with your father. Because there are definitely times for me where I'm just like, if we needed to pause right now, I would pause and probably just go in a corner and weep for a second, because it just brings back, it's just us really going back into those childhood memories and thinking about how it's affected us as adults, how it affects us, well, not me, but Jasper and Matt were saying how it affects them as parents, as fathers. And so it's real deep. This is a really good one. And I feel like if you haven't had the opportunity to really deeply reflect on your childhood experience or think about how your father has affected you, this is a good episode. There's some really good questions and some really honest and vulnerable answers. So I really hope you spend some time with this one and give it the time that it needs.
Yes.
See, don't do this to me. Y'all know y'all know I try not to be, but I be sensitive. Y'all know I can't be with the
Get your tissue out, John.
My old age, I'm getting bored.
This is the sensitive episode. This is the sensitive episode.
All right, I'm excited about this. Let's do this. All right, y'all. We'll check this out, and we'll be back with y'all after this episode.
Well, let's get started. Thank you all. Thank you all so much for joining us for this conversation. Let's go right into our Off the Georgia Dome. We're talking about Black Fatherhood today. Off the Georgia Dome. Quick thoughts.
I'm here to learn. I don't know anything about Black fatherhood. I mean, I have my own father. I think some of y'all know I'm definitely a daddy's girl. Love my dad down. You said you didn't know that? We got the same face, and that just solidified everything for us. Definitely a daddy's girl. I don't know. I'm curious to hear, y'all's thoughts on like being a father to a girl, because there's always like that perception that men have that soft spot for their daughters, and will do, their daughter could be like, I want the whole world, and they'll be like, sure, how do I make that happen for you? So I'm definitely curious y'all's thoughts on that. But yeah, I'm just here to learn about the ins and outs of Black fatherhood.
I'll go. So my dad passed in 2019, and my dad was kind of in and out a little bit. Like I started off with growing up with him, and then he was kind of in and out because my parents divorced. And so I have complicated feelings about fathers, even though I desperately, of course, even especially now that he's gone, want a father. And our relationship was actually was improving and getting better. And it was part of the reason why I moved back home to Atlanta. So it's just like it's not until my adult life was I more able to accept that Black men are different. And by saying that, it's just like I felt like I kind of learned the trope of the missing Black father, or the like complicated kind of Black father relationship. And so that really influenced how I thought about Black men and other Black fathers. And so not until later in life did I really start accepting, like, there's a lot of different examples of Black fathers who are actually present and who actually love their kids and who have emotional intelligence and like, so you saying you're a daddy's girl. Growing up, and when I say growing up, I mean well into my 20s and 30s. I would always take pictures of like a man with his daughter, or who I assume was his daughter, because it just always touched me, because that was something I always wanted. And so yeah, it's I have complicated feelings, but it's just like I believe in Black fathers, and I feel like Black fathers get a lot of they can get a lot of bad press, and in some instances rightfully so. But then that's just people are people, just people, period, you know, can be awful. So I think yeah, it's complicated, as you can tell. So I'm excited for this conversation to talk to some present Black fathers. So
yeah. Okay, I can go next. So I was thinking, since I got the invite, I've been excited and nervous. So like, I'm honored to be here, but I'm nervous because I'm an incomplete story, like as a father, right? Like my children are teenagers, and so um, it's and when I stop to think that I've been doing this fatherhood thing for more than a decade, it's I don't know how math works anymore. It's weird how that how that can be. But like, there's so much. I mean, I'm here to learn too, and there's so much that I'm sure I didn't get right, and it's, you know, it's just that the story's ongoing. Um, I'm interested to see how the conversation is going to go. Like, Black fatherhood is so complex, and we'll do the conversation. But so, you know, I'm nervous, but I'm excited to be here, to pick the brain of a daddy's girl, because I have one. I've realized, no, it's been from the jump. It's not realized. She's been under me for forever. And so, you know, just being able to talk to an adult daddy's girl and try to map the trajectory and even learn from that. I'm excited about this conversation.
Gosh, man, I think it's more excitement for me, man, because there are so many perspectives that I want to talk about fatherhood. You know, I'm a son, so there's one, and then
exactly,
you know, and then I'm a father now, so that relationship is also complicated. And then I'm also a therapist, you know, that works within the field and does training on infant mental health, on fatherhood, and other areas. And so there's just so much, you know. And then I'm still healing from my relationship with my father, you know. So all of it is ongoing. But man, it's just like when I got the call, it was just like so much I want to say. Even right now, it's just like father, you know. I just so much because these conversations are so far and few in between. And you know, I was so touched when I got the call from Amber to talk about this topic, because it's so relevant. Seriously, it's so relevant. So I'm excited to see where it goes, but this is going to be a rich conversation, so I'm excited.
it is. Why don't we breathe for a second, because I feel like I feel like it's some heaviness, and even for me, I almost just started crying.
I know. All of us may collectively.
Yeah. I tried to train myself not to, like, I've tried to prep not to cry. Like, I was like, you don't do that on their podcast. but I can't make any promises that that's gonna be what happens.
Hey, bro, it's okay.
Okay,
it's okay. It's okay.
That might be a good goal. This might be the first podcast with some tears.
It might be because I'm already feeling it. Can we take a moment to breathe? All right, everyone.
Yes.
Inhale. Hold it. Keep going. Keep inhaling. Hold it. And now exhale. Breathe out. We're gonna do that 3 more times. And I'm gonna count to 8. And breathe in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hold. And exhale. One more time. Inhale. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And exhale. While breathing, a tear dropped for me. So here we go. All right, let's start with just getting some backgrounds on our wonderful co-host. Audience, in case you have been around, Jasper came last year, was on a conversation about sexuality in the church. And if you're around in any other place, you might be seeing Matt all around as well. But let's start off with just Jasper and Matt telling us a little bit about what brings them to this conversation in terms of their fatherhood. Like, how many children do you have? How long you been you talked about it a little bit, but how many children, and just what is your professional background and whatnot?
So my name is Jasper. I have 2 children, a 16-year-old son. His name is Caleb, and a 14-year-old daughter. Her name is Chaley. I'm currently a graduate student seeking a PhD in philosophy at the University of Memphis. I'm in that summer. I'm trying to get my dissertation proposal together. So while my children ask me to play Smash Brothers and do all that, so like trying to balance both lives and do all of that. Hopefully, 2 more years left in this program. Been married to Natalie for 16 years. On the 29th of May, we celebrate our 16th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And so that's and I've known Jackie for, man, more than half of my life. We were like, we've been friends for a really long time. So that's how I ended up invited here. That's my homie.
Yay! We got 2 homie sets.
Yeah,
I know, right? Oh man, I'm a father of 4, and I'm very non-traditional when it comes to fatherhood and all things that I do. I try to be a disruptor, mainly because I want these conversations to be in spaces where they're not commonly in those spaces. And so when I think of how I would like to contribute and why I'm here to contribute, it's because my stat sheet is loaded. I'm a father of 4, and not just 4, but 4 girls. Side note, I wish we had fathers, like, how do you say, football cards, with all the stats on the stats on the back. I want to see cards for fathers, man. Like, this man got a resume here, man. He need to be on a card somewhere and pass those things out.
Yes.
to inspire other young fathers. Look at this brother. This brother got 2 kids, 16, and
yeah.
I think we need to, and it's just my sidebar in my mind, and my mind just works like that. So father of 4, 3 of which are triplets, all girls. I know, and then
that's real.
3 of which are triplets. The triplets are 7, big sister's 9. They're 15 months apart. And what else? I'm a mental health professional, like I said earlier. I'm a son, youngest of 4. And I think Amber gave me this call because she actually had some quality time with my family, seeing how we engage and how we interact. And so thought I'd be, an asset to this conversation. So that's it.
Beautiful, beautiful. And Matt is also married to one of my closest friends.
I am married. I am.
Oh, see, this adds a whole nother dimension.
The person who birthed the children.
That's right. But you know what though? I think in the back of my mind, subconsciously, what happens is that because when the conversations are usually approached about parenting towards my wife and I, it's usually centered around her. So if I leave her out, it's just my bias in my mind. Like, yo, ain't nobody asked me about me. Like, I'm a father too. Like, I played a role in all of this, And so that's probably why. I mean, my wife is amazing though. She's amazing. She's an educator. She's a trainer, you know, she's an author, she's a singer, she's everything. So
Rapper,
rapper, a great tandem, you know.
everything.
Yeah.
But you know what? I love that you brought that point up, because I think that's a great topic for us to go into. And when it comes to parenting, a lot of times people do focus more on the mother, or like people will, and it depends on who people is, but like popular culture sometimes. And I think a lot of times the stories focus on like the mother and the birthing experience. And even when I think about like postpartum, what we learned in the last episode was just that postpartum is after birth, period. It's not just that short period for mothers right after birth, it's the rest of their lives. But I don't know if there's a term for men, for the fathers, in terms of like what their experience is during the birth and then what their life is after that either. So I don't know, maybe there is a term and I just don't know it. And I also want to tread lightly on that, because I also recognize that the mothers are the ones that are holding the actual baby. Their bodies transform. It's a different experience for them. And yet at the same time, there's a huge experience for the father as well. So when it comes to being a father, do you feel left out in the parenting conversation sometimes? Or like, how do you feel about being sometimes, if like in your experience, have you felt like the second parent? Have you felt like or have you felt like the co-parent? Do you feel equal to the mother? How do you process that?
I'm trying to. So I think in the public, yeah. So I do. I'll just. This is pure anecdote. I'm not gonna we it.
Okay.
I feel left out.
I like
Like it's not. You know, the mother. We're blessed. Natalie and I are blessed to have really intelligent children. They're really smart. And so immediately people assume they take after their mother. Oh, she must be smart. And that's why they're smart. And we homeschooled for a while, and she was the primary teacher, so that might have something to do with it. But people don't even know that, and they just assume they're smart because she's smart. And I don't know. I don't know if it's pop culture and the dad is just usually, especially a Black Father, a sitcom, like he's usually a doofus. Well, at least not since the 90s. Since the 90s. Family Matters, it was good.
Yeah, you're right.
Fresh Prince, it was good. But like, into the 2000s, it started to get weird. And so, so I mean, I think I often have to just be humble and be in the back and not like, wait a minute, I taught them that. Like, I just have to like live with it. So yeah, I do. There's this left out part of it. I'm glad you asked that, actually, because the presumption is that it's not there. So it's nice to just say it out loud, I guess.
Ditto. You know, even before I became a father, I remember when I was an undergrad at Florida A&M University.
Go Rattlers.
Okay, let's go. All right. And I was in a speech class, and I don't even know how this happened, but one of my first speeches was called "What About Fathers?" I was not a dad. And then the speech was basically convincing the class to have some acknowledgement on fathers, like we exist or they exist. They are a real thing. And I felt that even, like I said, before I became a father. And it was very telling when my wife was pregnant with our firstborn and our secondborn, the attention that she got, even though we were shoulder to shoulder, it was like I was the invisible man, and I felt slighted. And I would always like clear my throat to make sure people knew that I exist. Dad here, because I think that's important, because it plays into the stereotypes that fathers feel, and which leads to the easy roll into the absent father. If we're treated as absent even before the actual seed comes, then it's easy in our mind to be like, well, y'all don't care about me anyway, and then stay into that role. And so, I mean, especially when the triplets were here, when we'd be out in public and people would come to us, and then they would just center around my wife. I don't know how you do it. And they're like, oh my gosh, they're just feeding her. And I'm like, well, I mean, I'm here too, I could get some type of acknowledgement.
Get a high five at least.
Yeah, like, I see you, Dad, but back to the mom, right? And so there was a lot of that, and even on an even more personal note, I think it took a little bit of convincing on my wife's part to believe that I had what it took to be a care provider, to be a person that could nurture and be there for my kids as a father, based on some of the roles that we've seen in our youth, based on some of the things that we've experienced in real time. And so that's more of a systemic understanding. That's not just individual. And so, yeah, I feel it, and I still do up until this point. And so that's why I'm like, yes, let's have a conversation about fathers, because we matter. Where's the hoodie? Fathers, we need that too. So yes, I appreciate this question, because we are here, and the statistics aren't what they say in public, like in real life. The statistics are more in favor of actually African American fathers. We are doing our thing, but that's not the narrative that's put out there.
The narrative.
Therefore, it's perpetuated, which gives it an easier target to say that this is what it is.
I'm so glad you said that, because I have a friend who studies Black fathers, like in his research, and some of the statistics that he would share with me, just like in passing, about how Black fathers are actually more engaged than fathers of other races, wasn't surprising anecdotally, because I know Black fathers, I know involved Black father, I have an involved Black father, but just like comparing that against like the common trope that Black fathers are just not engaged and not, absent and all those things. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. Just statistically, we know that Black fathers are just really engaged.
That's like I feel like that needs to be a whole campaign. And I mean, I've seen like, there's so many Instagram is my social media of choice for the most part. And there are a bunch of pages that try to, change that narrative and show examples of Black fatherhood, which I think are really good. And I actually have been really helpful for me in like I was saying, like in my kind of evolution of understanding how Black men are, because I needed to see some other examples. And so hearing other people's stories has helped, and seeing those other stories has helped too. So I feel like I feel like I need to read up on some of those stats, because it's so hard to relearn. It's hard to relearn that trope of Black fathers, especially when I still see examples of like the kind of, I don't want to say the deadbeat dad, but yeah, it's like it's the deadbeat dad, but there are deadbeat moms out there too. So and that's just because there's deadbeat people, and I want to say that it's just they're all, like I was saying in the beginning, there's awful people, and some of those people just so happen to have children, and so it's just like across the board, people can be awful. So there we go. So I want to go into that some more, because I think people oftentimes, whatever they're doing currently, it might be in reaction to their previous experience. And so current fathers don't want to be the fathers that they were, or they want to be the fathers that they were in certain ways. And the same with mothers and people, just anything. And I've, and I think people, when I think about just, I guess I would love to use a different term, but the absent fathers, a lot of them probably had absent fathers as well. And they didn't want to repeat that, and yet they did. And I think about my own father and how his relationship with his father was strained. And I never got a chance to talk to him about how he maybe didn't want to repeat it, but I assumed that he didn't want to repeat how his father was to him specifically. And yet he ended up in the majority of our lives having a strained relationship with us, or not being as present as we would have liked. And so he ended up kind of repeating, it seems, in a way, like that absence. So for you all, both you all have already touched on it, but specifically asking, like, how did your experience with your father influence your current fathering? Like, are there like one or two specific examples that you can think of to say, like, from your experience with them, this is a direct reaction to that in your current fathering?
Yeah, so my dad so I played basketball, and we had a hoop in the driveway, and I remember him out there. Like I remember him being out there. Um, I remember him attempting, because he, and I've learned this. I learned this as I got older. You know, he had specific issues with his dad that he was, you know, trying to exorcise and stuff like that. And so, he really tried. And it's funny that like it was only in to adulthood that I really started to appreciate the battle that one has with like the demons that they have, right? So like as I like I took it personal when he'd come home, he'd have a long day at work, and I again, because I was selfish, I wanted him to play basketball, and like he would just go inside, and I would just feel so slighted. But now as a father, I look back and like, some days you just don't have it. Like you don't have it after a day. Like and so I can do better retroactive work now that I've been into this some, where I can be more gracious to him in the times that he failed, because I recognize how complicated it is to try to be you, but then at the same time, you're you for others at the same time. And you're working out you, like you're still trying to figure out you, because that doesn't end, right? We're dynamic human beings. And so like giving him that grace in hindsight, I'm able to do that. And I think that helps me as a father. I think that helps me um be, for lack of a better term, like be more compassionate to myself, like when I fall short, because like this is a part of the, sometimes like once you become a father and you receive that label, you surrender your humanity in the eyes of people, and so like you are just a father, and you're just fully disposable as a father, and you're not a human anymore. And so like I recognize I was doing that to him. And so then I'm incredibly gracious of the times where he would play basketball, of the times where we would go to breakfast, or we would like, he would do things with us. Like I could remember, cause he was very attentive. Like he was terrible at video games, but he would sit down and try to play Mario Kart, and he was trash. And we would mock him, and like he would try to sit with us. And I really appreciate that, because I understand how complex a being he is now as I'm older. And I think that helps me make sense of my own fatherhood. I don't know if that makes sense what I'm saying. But yeah, those kind of like those times that he would help. And I guess the other time, I'll tell one other story. That was positive, one negative. I remember I blew the engine of my first car. And I remember he looked at it, and like it was bone dry, right? And so he was really upset at me because I didn't get an oil change. Like I didn't get one oil change. That car died in my hands. Right now, Jackie's looking at me funny, but like in my defense, I didn't know about oil changes. I didn't know. No one told me. So like, I remember he was spazzing on me in the driveway, and I was like, bro, like you didn't inform me of this necessity. You didn't tell me this. And so like that was a thing that I logged away. Like, if I'm not instilling, I can't take out on my children what I'm not putting into them, because they come into the world ignorant. We all know children, and they're dummies. They don't know anything, right? And that's not even me picking on them. It's not, they're in the world, they're new. So like if I'm not instilling, if I'm not pouring in, I can't then what's the word? Like I can't get on them for not knowing, right? Like and that like so anyway, those were two interactions that I gathered from him that helped me. Yeah.
And I think he's 78 right now, probably still stronger than me. He's yeah. Really? The genes, the genes are incredible, right? I remember having people telling me that I look like my dad, and I used to be the worst insult ever. Because I could not stand that Negro, because my youth was so traumatic based on his presence, and hindsight, of course, like Jasper was saying, everything becomes so much more clear. When I started my family therapy program, my master's program, learning some of the things that I learned, And one of the terminologies that I learned was transgenerational issues,
Mm.
and boy, oh boy, like that is where the waterworks started for me, because it made everything make sense for me. And I really started to have love for him in ways that I never thought possible. My dad, his father passed away when he was 7 years old, and, he was born in Haiti, and he had several older sisters. And, the four older brothers that he did have were out to murder him because his dad left him an inheritance of land.
Mm.
And
Oh, wow.
I'm just imagining his youth, like it was not stable. He did not have a father figure. The male figures that he did have could not stand him. And
Mm.
so for him, he was trying to be the best that he believed, with all of the things that were available to him. My dad is not well educated. I think he finished probably his elementary school education, and he was out there. He was doing manual labor. He's working, farms, gardens, and different things like that. And somehow, some way, he made his way to the United States with four kids. Well, I'm sorry, to the Bahamas first, where three of the four of us were born. And when we were in the Bahamas, I remember this memory vividly of how we celebrated him. Like, we had a long driveway. We lived in the sticks, whatever, and we had a long driveway. And when his car would come down the driveway, the four of us would be outside chanting, "Yay, Daddy, come! Yay, Daddy, come!" Right? And like celebrating him coming home because we were so happy that he was there. And I remember how a lot of that shifted when we came to the States. We transitioned to Miami from Nassau, and my dad now had to work on a farm where he was picking fruits and vegetables 8 hours, 10 hours out of the day in the sun in Homestead, and he would come home exhausted, exhausted. And there was no more "Yay, Daddy, come," because Daddy came home a different dad. He was tired, he was angry, he was dissatisfied with the quality of life. And of course, without the education or resources, he projected a lot of his emotions and dissatisfaction in life on us. And so the cycle started, to where it started with my dad. He projected towards my mom or my eldest brother towards my sister towards my other brother. And then everybody hates Matt because I'm the youngest. And so it all falled on me. And I remember what that did to me as a child. It made me very angry, very angry and very bitter towards the idea of family, and I remember thinking, I don't want this at all. And so the hopeless romantic started to evolve in me, to where I'd fantasize about what a healthy family looked like. And I remember having friends that, when I went to their homes and it was a different environment, I'm like, this is possible? Like, you guys get hugs and kisses from your fathers? What is that? Like, and then I think one of the worst memories that I have that, still reverberates in my bones, even now that I think about it, is I got expelled from one elementary school for fighting. Like, I fought so many times at that elementary school that they were like, "Deuces, you can't come back." So I got transferred to a new school. And on the first day of school there, guess what I did? I fought again, right? So, and I got suspended. And I remember my dad, I got suspended, and it was indoor suspension. So we stayed at the school, but we had to pick up trash around the perimeter of the school. And my dad saw me, he saw me outside picking trash because he was doing landscaping in the area, and he saw me, and he gave me an excellent butt whooping, because of that. And I remember being so angry just at his treatment towards us. And at that elementary school that I stayed, it was my 5th grade year. I think I only had 3 months there. And of course, that wasn't the last time I fought. I fought several other times after that. And so when graduation came, it was just my dad and I. He took me to the graduation, which was at another location. It was at a high school that I wasn't familiar with. And my dad and I went. And I was in the audience. Well, where the kids were, he was in the audience. And they were handing out awards: science award, math award, all those awards that Amber, Jasper, and Jacqueline, you guys got that I didn't get, right? Yeah, it was me. I didn't get any awards, right? So
Oh.
my dad left. He left me at the graduation, you know, and I was 10 years old at the time. He got in his car, drove home, and left. And so after graduation was over, I'm looking for my dad and I can't find my dad. And instant tears. Like I started crying, panicking, looking around for my dad. And a neighbor saw me in this, you know, panic mode. And the neighbor was like, Matt, what's wrong with you? And I was like, I can't find my dad. I can't find my dad. And so the neighbor took me in his car, brought me home. And when we pulled up to the house, my dad's car was in the driveway. I got in the house. This dude was in his bedroom, lounging on the bed. And I'm still in tears, you know, I'm still in tears. So I muscled up the courage at 10 years old, muscled up the courage, knocked on his door. And I asked my dad, why did you leave me? You know, like, why did you leave me? Like, you know, I'm your baby. I'm the last, you know? And, you know, and he said it in Creole, but I'll translate it in English. He said, you wanted me to stay in this audience and watch my son underperform, you know? That's the translation, like, you know, like not perform at all. He's like, no way. You know, he's like, I left. That's like, I couldn't sit there watching everybody else kid get awarded except for my son. So I left. And I think that was one of the most critical moments in my youth because that stopped me from ever shooting my shot for real. I stopped trying, you know?
Wow.
Stopped trying. I never gave 100% at anything. Maybe some of the things that I favored, probably like music, PE, you know, like those things like that. But I remember going throughout the rest of my education from middle school and high school, not trying, you know. I was an AP Chem. I don't even know how I got an AP chemistry, but I got in it and I didn't do anything in that class, you know, not a thing. And it was because I was afraid of failing again and having the same reaction from my dad of abandonment, you know. And then it echoed. Remember, I said earlier that at that time, you know, later on, I eventually replaced the father figure with my brother, who was 2 years older than I am. And the same thing happened with my brother, you know, like the abandonment happened with my brother. Like when I got to high school, he played baritone in the marching band and symphonic band. So I joined and played baritone to follow in his footsteps. And, you know, I started playing my ninth grade year, like late my ninth grade year. By the time I became a 10th grader, I went to the same high school he was at. He was a senior. He was like a phenom. He was so good. You know, I'm talking about, he was really good. So he had a reputation for himself. And I remember we had this competition called solos and ensembles where you had to go in front of a judge and play a solo and get scored. And I remember my first time playing a solo, I got an excellent, which was the rating. You know, the highest was a superior, second was excellent, good, fair, and then poor. I got excellent, and I was like, yeah, I got excellent. And then when the score sheets came out, everybody was looking at it. My brother was there too. He saw my score, and his reaction was not the same as mine. You know, he was like, "You got an excellent, man. You sorry, you're not my brother." You know, because of course he's always getting superior. He disowned me in front of the high school. Now, 10th grade. Now, 10th grade. You know, same reaction, instant tears. Like I was like destroyed. He disowned me in front of everybody. And it was just like, you see, this is why I don't try, you know, this is why I don't try. And I remember those occasions in my mind, like, you know what, I'm never gonna do this to my kids. I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna love my kids. They're gonna feel my presence, you know, win or fail, I still love them. My affection isn't attached to a condition, you know. And I really tried to embody that as a father based on those memories of of having abandonment issues, which later translated into anxiety and depression. Which, of course, being a young man from the inner city, I ain't never scared. So you ain't see fear. What you saw was anger. You saw anger. So anger was the main emotion that was manifested until I got to Oakwood, went to therapy, and then here I am.
Matt, were they trying to challenge you though? Like, was your dad trying to like challenge you with the like leaving you and it backfired?
Son, I didn't even know how to catch the bus, and where the high school was from my house, uh, I don't know how I was gonna get home outside of a neighbor. You know, this was an area. Okay, so when you're a child, you're in the back seat of the car. You know,
Sure.
you don't know how to navigate any, I wasn't on the bus yet and anything like that. So maybe, maybe that was the case, but man, that's poor
For
execution on his
sure. For
part,
sure.
you know, because, he didn't like leave me like a couple dollars to catch
Right.
catch the
Yeah.
bus or anything like that. My,
Yeah.
my guy was like, I'm out, because I guess the emotions of seeing his child fail in real time was too much for him to manage,
Mm.
and I could understand that now based on, what his expectations were in his mind. He wanted all of us to excel, but I think the means of him uh, doing that to all of us was focusing on our failures rather than being a cheerleader for when we did have any marginal level of success.
Mm.
I never remember him saying good job,
Right.
you did your thing, or
Right. Right.
anything like that, like yay. It was mainly like, why can't you do this, or how come this, and those were the sentiments that echoed in our household, which created this mentality of, you know what, I'm not even gonna try, because what's the point,
100%.
what's the point of trying when if I try and fail, it's gonna be, the same reaction from my dad. And so I was like, in my mind, so if I don't try and fail, I ain't trying. You try
Yeah.
to minimize it in your mind, which is defense mechanisms kicking in. And so I was like, if I don't try and fail, I ain't try. So what you gonna say about me
Right.
now?
Right.
What I'm
Right.
saying?
Right. 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 Right.
So that was the sentiments I took throughout, high school, and eventually it impacted my college career, because I eventually got kicked out of FAMU on academic
Mm.
probation and suspension, and it was based on anxiety and depression. I was way too anxious about failing. In fact, I was kicked out of FAMU for like 3 years. My dad didn't know a thing. He would call me like, "Hey, how's college?" I'd be like, "Yo, I'm doing great up here. I'm in school doing this," and I was out of school, like working dead end jobs and so forth. And to his mind, life was great. My son is in college doing great. And I'm like, yeah, 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 yeah. Well, he's like, when's graduation? I'm like, you see how the semesters work? I got like, I have, I got some extra credits I got to do. And then there's the end, like making up stuff, man. But I was actually kicked out of school. And eventually I told him, and I got back in school, got my associates, and then went off to Oakwood, and that's.
Could I, Jackie, can I say something
Yeah,
real
of
quick to
course.
that? Yeah, like, so, because like hearing that story and what I'm about to say by no means justifies leaving your 10-year-old at their, I'm not what I'm about to say is not do that. But what I notice is that like in my, when you start to see, so if you do a lot of introspection, like the negative parts of you, right?
Mm.
And the most frightening thing is to see it in your children.
Right.
Right. But then one of the things that and that's why I appreciate you telling that story, is because you can overcompensate and try to beat it out of your children, metaphorically speaking, physically, however, and then like do real harm to them that like will then either create a new problem or so, right? So like because my son is 16, so like I'm watching him very carefully, and like when I see something it's like, oh no, but like if you can go too hard and in the attempt to undo, like do like an incredible amount of harm. And so like that's what I hear in that story, like not so it's sympathetic, but by no means excusing it, where like you want the best for your children, and so you don't want them to redo the negative things in you, but man, you have to really be careful that you don't overcompensate and then ruin them in new ways or different ways, and then they ultimately do the thing that you were trying to avoid. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and I think that's where the balance come in, because my wife had a totally different story. She had a supportive family system, and they hugged and they sang and they watched The Sound of Music together and stuff like that, right? You know what I'm saying? So, I think we do find a great balance. And of course, like I said, I went to therapy, man. I did that work, and I'm still not opposed to doing the work. That's why I said the perspectives of fatherhood is many for me, because I have my own story as a father, and becoming a father, being, a mental health professional and learning some of the things that I learned, being a trainer to fathers as well. and learning the statistics of how an absent father or a present father may affect the child's life. You know, I'm not trying to say I have the standard or am the standard, but what I am saying is that, you know, we are careful in making sure that we don't create an unhealthy entitlement in us as parents to try to balance off this ledger. I didn't get this, so go to the toy store and be like, pick anything you want.
Right.
It's on us, you know.
Right.
Like, you get a car, you get you know. So we do have to have a balance, man. And we're still a work in progress, you know. But the healing part, I think, is the most beautiful part for me, because, you know, for a very long time, I thought that I was undeserving of his love. You know? I thought I was very undeserving of his love, to the point to where the defense mechanism come in and you're like, you know what? If you don't love me, I don't love you.
Right.
You know, and it's like, if you're not, you know, like that type of energy was what I perpetuated in myself. And that's unhealthy. You know, although he didn't have the love to give me, and sometimes still doesn't have it. We just had a tiff over the Christmas holiday, you know, but even though sometimes he doesn't have it, doesn't mean that I can't desire it, you know. A desire for a healthy relationship with anybody is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. So I'm not going to give out what he gives me, but I'm also going to have healthy boundaries to where it's not going to impact me in a negative way, to where now I can't be present in my kid's life, in my wife's life, and then as a provider in my clients' lives as well. So it's a dance, man. It's a two step. That's what it is. You know?
You know what's interesting is I'm listening to y'all talk about these stories. The father-son relationship is coming up in really interesting ways, because I think of how fathers engage with their sons in ways that will probably not be the same in how they engage with their daughters. You know, like this idea of like anger being expressed. You know, Jasper, you just told this story about your like, you know, a few minutes ago, about your dad being like, oh, you know, you didn't have the oil in your car, like, why didn't you get the oil change? And how he engaged with you around that was not like, oh, you know, let me teach you how to change this. Or, you know, even when I think about that story, like, I don't think that a daughter would be expected to change her own oil. Like a daughter might be, like a father might be like, oh, you know, it's time for your car to get serviced, so let me go ahead and take care of that for you. And then Matt, as you were talking about, you know, your story with your dad, like, I think it would be unusual for a dad to leave his 10-year-old daughter to fend for herself, like on the street somewhere, just like knowing what we know about like kidnapping and like sex trafficking and things like that. There's this sort of protection that happens with girls. So on one hand, I'm like listening to you all tell these stories about like the father-son dynamic, but it's making me curious about the father-daughter dynamic, because you are like, there are five daughters between you all.
Right.
So I'm just kind of wondering, like, you know, given all this weight of how you were raised, like the dynamic of the father-child relationship that you all experienced, how does that translate and manifest, if at all, like in your relationships with your daughters?
Yeah, so God was good to me in the daughter that he gave me, right? So like, so when we're talking about the dance, so I have a son and a daughter, and it is easy to fall into the tropes, because, you know, misogyny, patriarchy, like it's in the air we breathe, right? Like it's easy to breathe in. So it's easy to want to toughen up your son and to be patronizingly delicate with your daughter and those kind of things, right? And I wanted to commit to not doing that, but from pretty early on, Shelly informed me she was going to participate with me not doing that. And what I mean by that is that, like, she, you know, when we would have family worship, she would notice the women in the stories in the Bible and be like, well, Dad, why is this like this? From early on, like, I'm talking like 3-4 years old. Dad, what is this about? Like, what is, right? So now I have to like work through this with her. And then I remember, and so then, we, and she's good at that. So like we've been figuring that out together. And so she does there is a different kind of nurture that she gets that Caleb doesn't get, because she's a Black woman in the world, and I'm cognizant of that. And so they aren't going to have the same experiences in the world. And so I try to parent in a way that prepares them both for their very singular and unique experiences. And I remember when I got here in Memphis, I read this article by Iris Marion Young. It's called Throwing Like a Girl, where she does this, and it's been a while since I read it, but she does this phenomenology of like becoming a woman, and how she makes this very interesting observation that because of the way space works for women and men, that when you see like a ball thrown to a boy, he will attack the ball, where a woman tends not to attack it because of how they're taught about space. And that when you see this is generally speaking, of course, like when you see a woman out in space, like she's usually closed in, like she walks in a closed in way, right? And she sits. And so I remember I was at the airport with my son when I was reading it, and I started to look around, and it started to track pretty closely, right? When women sit, they sit closed. And I remember like immediately the minute I got back home, I wanted to see like, did I raise my daughter to be like this? Like where she's like, where they throw like the Iris Young, she talks about how boys throw with their hips, like they throw with their whole body, and girls tend to just throw with their arms. And this is how like, this has a lot to do with like training and the way we're taught to use our bodies and things like that. And so I took Chaley outside to play football, because this was a test for me, like as a father. Like if she throws this football like this, I failed in a way that I feel bad, but she didn't. And I remember not like wanting a celebration. Like I didn't tell anybody like, hey, I did great as a father. But I remember, like there was hips in the and I was like, all right, cool. Like, cool. She knows that like her body is hers. And so then what it did is it reinforced me teaching her that like you're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to be in the room. You're allowed to be big. You're allowed to be loud. Her brother sometimes will because he's we're trying, and so he'll be like, shut up, like when he says something she doesn't like, and I'll be like, you can't do. She's allowed to say whatever she wants to say. And so so I remember when because we enrolled them in a private school, like in a local private school here, and I visited the school, and a teacher brought me to the side, and there was an air of concern. She was like, Chaley wants to play football with the boys, and she won't let them play until they let her play. And, and it was concern like from the teacher. And I was like, that's great. Like, I'm glad they need to include her, and she needs to be able to play, and she has a right to play. And I remember the teacher like being like taken aback a little bit when in that conversation, but she left it alone. And I was really happy that Chaley understood that she is allowed. That's really as a woman, she is allowed to be in that space. And I feel like there is an appreciation that she has for me as a father who lets her be and lets her grow and figure out and learn and take up space. So there is differences, but not in the way that like I think is stereotypical. I don't want her to forget though that this is a unique space, and that out there as a Black woman, there is going to be pushback if she's loud and big and strong. This doesn't mean she doesn't need to be, but she needs to be prepared for it. So I try to prep her for it.
I appreciate that story so much, because this is like a little pathological, but I like to listen to like true crime like podcasts and watch true crime like TV and things like that. But what is so interesting to me is that for a couple of the people who I'm thinking about, really the people who like the Bernie Madoffs, like the people who like made away with like huge sums of money, is that a couple folks who I've listened to, they told these stories about when they were younger, they would do these things and no one told them that they couldn't. And so they just continued to do whatever was on their heart to do. Unfortunately, for some people, like it just like took a sharp left into into like criminality. But I appreciate like a Black girl learning from a very young age, like, oh, I didn't know that, like, I could not do, like, no one drew these very close boundaries around me. So I appreciate that story a lot.
Man, it's emotional for me even now just hearing that story because you know, I don't have a son, you know. I don't have a son, and it's like, boo, you know, like, you know, and the fact that I'm West Indian, you know, the West Indian culture, they won't let you rest until you have both.
Right.
You know? And so,
I didn't know that.
oh my gosh, man, they are like on you. So if you don't have a healthy boundary, they'll be in your bedroom, be like, "Do you have a boy yet? Where's the boy?" You know,
I
like,
didn't know that.
when is it? Yeah. Oh my gosh, man. So, you know, having to live with that and then having that desire, if I have to be honest, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Of course I want a son because I want those moments, like, you know, those vicarious, you know, paying it forward type of moments through his son. And it didn't happen. So I'm okay. I'm fine, right?
You sure, Matt?
Right.
You said I'm fine with a slight inflection.
Right. I still be having dreams, you know. Your boy can hope, right? I got a couple names in the bag waiting, you know.
Okay.
But I think that is very telling because I am the youngest of four, and I do have an older sister, and I saw how my father related to her. You know, I saw how my father related to her in some very unhealthy ways, you know, in some very unhealthy ways. And then, you know, this podcast is academy and streets. So I'm gonna take you to the streets a little bit.
Okay.
Take you to the streets a little bit. So being raised in an environment I was raised in, you know, I became street very early, you know. And so one of those things that happen is that you have a heightened awareness for who people are. You know, you can tell who's prey and who's predator, you know, who's prey and who's predator. So learning from the streets, you learn how to approach young women based on if they're prey or if, you know, or if there's something else, you know. And prey was usually those who don't have their fathers in their life versus a person who does have their father.
Yo, that's real.
Wow.
You could,
Wow.
you know, based on the first couple of you know, conversations, you know, and sometimes you wouldn't even have to talk. You could just tell by the action, by the thirst, by the desire for affection and the need to have some type of bond with the male presence. You're like, yeah, you know. And so that knowledge was in me as well coming into fatherhood. So it's like, you know, I want to be that father that my kids represent, you know, a person that has a father figure in their life, so that, you know, that thirst for love, affection, and acceptance isn't pervasive in their lives to where they look for it in unhealthy spaces, you know. And so that knowledge, you know, not saying that, you know, that's the only thing that could develop from the absence of a father, but it was known to me based on, you know, having a sister and seeing that relationship with my father, and then as a young man growing up in the streets having interaction with women before the Lord put his hands on me, you know, right? Right. So I was, you know, I was a person that could identify that very early, you know, and I knew that I needed to have a healthy relationship with my daughters in order to not perpetuate that cycle of abandonment, the cycle of, you know, unhealthy desires, the cycle of thirst, you know. And so that was that still is a motivational factor to where I have to play a role in each one of their lives, and the role is totally different per child, you know. So essentially I'm 4 different fathers to 4 different girls, you know. So because each one has a different dynamic of what they yearn for with the relationship they have with me, you know. speaking about the story about football, that's one of my like ultimate dreams, to teach my son how to play football. You know, I was pretty good, but because I grew up Adventist, you know, they wouldn't, you know, whatever. And so right, but I could throw a football very well, and I was like, man, I can't wait to teach my kids the mechanics of,
Right.
you know, right.
Yeah.
And so I had a dream just the other day of, you know what, I'm gonna just teach my girls, right? I'm gonna just teach my,
Yay!
you know, and I'm gonna teach them, and in the dream, you know, they became really nice, you know, like they were doing trick plays, you know, nobody could beat them. No one can beat them on a 4-on-4 because they have such a bond and they play together so well that they can just like demolish any, you know, opponent that they play against. And so, you know, this is something that I'm actually going to pick up this summer, with actually helping them just feel comfortable being athletic and being feminine, and not having to choose between the two, you know? And so they have the all, you know how guys like, I'm all man, you know, I'm all man, you know, they have that in me, but they also have my femininity as well, you know, and I can say my femininity because that's a part of who I am, you know, and they also have a strong mother that they can see be, you know, feminine, but also can, you know, can really give off some masculine energy as well. So I think that dynamic is something that my wife and I really practice on a daily basis, to not show the absence of one and the dominance of another, you know. So you know, it's a special relationship.
I'm really glad you brought up that last point, because that was something that somewhat came up in the last episode. So as I'm hearing you all talk, you're talking about, so you have all of these different identities that you're bringing to to this moment, right? You are a man, you're a father. And then like what Jasper said a little while ago, it's like, I'm not even a human being anymore. I'm just a father. And then even, you know, Matt, you're like a rapper, you're a therapist, Jasper, a philosopher, about to be a philosopher. It's like all these different things. And then what you were just talking about is just having the masculine and the feminine. And I'm wondering about like how your identity has, like how your sexual identity has evolved, if at all, and how your relationship to your wife, going from, you know, your wife mainly to now mother, and how that interaction has changed. Because what, like in our Mother's Day episode, and what I think we hear a lot in just popular culture, why the term MILF was even created, was because a lot of times women, also because we are socialized to be, you know, objects and to be consumed and to mostly be sexual beings. Once a woman becomes a mother, a lot of times it's like she feels like that's her life, or she's pinned into that. But I don't really, and so she might lose, people might assume that she loses sexual appeal or her sexual desire, but I don't really hear that happening with men. I don't hear too many fathers say that I don't feel sexy anymore, or I don't want to have sex, or men or women only look at me now as a father, even though, you know, sometimes there's like, men do get the dad bod. I feel like that's the only thing I've heard ever when it comes to like the transition into being a dad. But I don't really hear, I mean, if anything, I hear men being called zaddies, you know, it's just like, oh, that's the dad. It's like, yes, let's get it, you know, but I don't really see that as a dynamic with men as much. So my question to you is two parts. It's like, one, how have you seen kind of like that part of you like evolve after being a father? And then also, how has your relationship with your wife changed or not changed in terms of how you all, and I'm not trying to like ask about your sex lives, but I'm saying like, because it's a thing about, you know, women becoming wives to mothers, and how men will, a lot of times, as we've heard, like women oftentimes get mothers, like one of the main times of infidelity in relationships is during when the woman is pregnant. And so, and because she's not fulfilling like a sexual need or something, or men just wanting the woman to, you know, have a certain type of body, but her body's changed after pregnancy, that because of that, you know, he's no longer attracted to her. And so then he goes out and cheats. And so I'm just curious about like how that whole, like how you see women, how you see your wife, that whole thing. And if that's too personal, feel free to not answer it. But those are the two questions. I mean, I know that was kind of like a
Yeah, no, I'm trying to track the questions, and like,
okay, the two questions are, one, how do you understand yourself as like evolving as a sexual being post fatherhood? And second is how has your relationship with your wife evolved as she moved from wife as a sexual being to mother?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the second question, she didn't really lose her sexuality as a mother. I remember, as a father, you recognize that you share her body now with a child.
Hmm.
I hope this don't make me sound crazy because of the feeding and
I've never heard anybody say it like that.
because of the feeding and all that. Like it's now there's a new dynamic, and so timing changes, right? Like things don't, and her body goes through changes after birth that are responses to this baby, and so like that this I'll use disrupt, but not in a negative like it's it disrupts that previous relationship when it was just the two of you. So there is that, like there's just the dances come up a lot in this pod. That's a new dance that you have to dance. It's not just the two of you dancing anymore, it's the two of you juggling a baby while dancing. And so like it becomes like an interesting dance. I remember like I gained, because she was really, I did not do this on purpose, but like she was self-conscious about like her weight. And I remember I gained like 15 pounds. Like, and I want to say that was sympathy pounds that I gained with her so that we could, I did it, like there was maybe something subconscious that didn't want her to like weigh more than me so that she would feel better about her. So that's what I tell myself. I don't know. Maybe I let go. Who knows? So there, I mean, there's that. Like, I don't think she lost. Yeah, no, I don't think she lost it. And there is like, there. I grew up in the era where MILF was a thing, so like it's a thing. Like it wasn't like like she's a mom now. And sadly, society in some circles, you become sexier as a better father. Like people, you get rewarded for it. Like it's like, as opposed to like, if she's a good mother, she's supposed to be a good mother, right? Like she's somehow not doing her job. But like if you're a good father, you're extraordinary, like you're some sort of superhero. And I saw like this thing that went viral. I don't remember what year it was, where even like the dad bod was being valorized, like the belly of the dad was being like, it was like, wow, that's sexy. So that's interesting. And so, I mean, I don't know. I guess you can't lose out there. I guess the one thing that you could do is you could rest on those laurels. Like you could let society celebrate you into a place where you're a bad fit for your own home, if that makes sense. Like, because you kind of just rest in it. And, so there's that battle, but it is sad that they're,
I'm sorry, real quick, that made me think about like how many episodes of like, I'm thinking like Fresh Prince or Martin or any of those like sitcoms where the men would intentionally have babies or like
right.
Yes.
Yep.
To attract women, or it's just like they would intentionally wear a
take
ring.
them to the mall, take them to the park, all that.
Exactly. Yeah. Or even when it comes to wearing a wedding ring, because that's supposedly more attractive, because of what being a father represents, or being, caring or nurturing or something. So that's interesting what you said.
No, I mean, it's really crazy because like there is a part, there's the evil side of all of us. There's the flesh, like this, like, and I know if I go to the park and push my children on a swing, like that's gonna garner attention. It's gonna be like, wow, he's amazing. And you can weaponize that at the expense of your family, if you're not careful, instead of just being a good father, and know that that's what you're supposed to be, as opposed to like you're extra for being that. But I'll let Matt go.
I used to shun that attention, like you're a good father. I'm like, yeah, and like what else am I supposed to be? Like what is the expectation out here? Like, oh my gosh, you're in their lives. And I'm like, thank you, like you're being a father, like you're caring for your kids. And I'm like, that's not a compliment. Like, keep that over there, please. There's that dynamic of having to wrestle with, being the super dad. And then, I don't know why this is a thing, but it seems like the more kids you have that you're in their lives, the higher you're valued in society. Like now I'm some type of like super, like, I don't know, like off the scale type of father, like Matt, anything father, let's ask Matt, like, and it's like, no, please, like I'm learning on the job as well. And so on the other side of it, I had to be a witness to the shifts mentally, emotionally, and physically that my wife had to take part of. And I'm a natural empath, so it did impact me to see her not see value in herself based on the experiences that happened to her mental, her emotional, and her physical body, And so I became a dad and a life coach, like, like I didn't want to see her down on herself. And it did impact me as a father, as a man, as a sexual being. It impacted me because the desires that I had wasn't equated on the other side. And so we did struggle in our dynamic as far as intimacy was concerned, like, but now we're in a totally different space to where I'm like, you better get it, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Look at this mother, look at this mother of 4 over here. You know what I'm saying? You better, and it's like one of the beautiful things that happened, and it's just in recent years, is that she acknowledged that the way I saw her was never the way she saw herself, and she had an opportunity to see herself through my eyes. And I think Amber echoed that one time, and the photos that I've been taking of her as of late, like I wanted her to see, like, this is what I actually see, and so internalize that. And until it's hers, until she owns it, it's not going to be something that's real, so there were struggles, there were struggles as far as the intimacy levels that we had in our relationship. And I think the healing part of it was through therapy, was through making sure that we can actually communicate about some of our insecurities, some of our desires, some of our wants, and we blossomed into this different institution, and I can't even call it a marriage anymore because I don't know how much stock I have in that understanding anymore. But I know we're in a different space to where our understanding and our intimacy is off the charts based on us seeing each other in a valued stance as a father, her seeing me as a father and me seeing her as a mother, but then seeing each other as so much more, seeing each other as so much more, so I hope that answered the question.
So do y'all feel like sexy daddies?
Hell yeah, shoot, like, and I think that's because I'm next to a sexy mom, I think that's what really makes me feel, like, I don't feel like my sexy is unmatched, or overmatched or undermatched, I think we're very commensurate, and I think that's where the health of our dynamic really blossom, because we're feeding each other and we're empowering each other. But it starts with empowering the self first, I had to see it for myself, and she had to see it for herself. And so now, now we're sexy parents.
Right?
So, I mean, this feels like a safe space. I guess I'm working my way to where Matt is. I don't know. There are days where, sure, I feel like a sexy dad, but then I don't know. There's this. I don't. Yeah, that's a good, because, and maybe this is the wrong kind of internalizing, but like a lot of the sexiness comes, at least from me, if like it feels like it comes from making sure things are right.
Interesting.
Like, right. So like if it's not right, then I feel like real insecure about that. Like there's something going wrong. And I think that has like a negative impact on like that sense of self that Matt was talking about. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess maybe I'll feel sexier a couple years from now when you hit that mark and things like start to level out, then maybe that'll come. I mean, Matt maybe want to, like, his immediate response was like, man, I want that. Like, I'm glad I'm on this podcast. 'Cause I'm like, all right, that's a target to aim at. But it goes in and out, I think.
No, I feel you. I feel you. And I think one of the things that helps me feel so vibrant in my sexuality is the fact that my kids are well taken care of. You know, I don't want to be seen as something, and then you see my kids, you be like, "Yo, this nigga kids, these dusty old kids walking around these streets." You know, that's something that bothered the mess out of me. Because I worked in spaces in schools, childcare centers, and so forth, where I'd see a mom coming in. You'd be like, "Okay, mom, you better get it." Right?
Yeah.
And then the kid follows. You be like, "Okay, but those diapers though."
Yeah, right.
Like, come on, mom. You know, like get it together. You know, so that's one of the things that we like intentional in. You know, like I don't want to be in public and I'm looking clean and well groomed, and my kids are like, you know, not stepping up. So that's a part of what keeps us, you know, where we are. You know, and it's not perfect, man. We got 4 girls, you know.
Yeah.
And there's hair that needs to be done.
Yeah.
So my big old fingers have to get in there. And,
Yep.
You know, I was gonna say, do y'all do hair?
Yeah. I had to learn how to. I was twisting Chaley's hair. Like I had to learn how to do. I didn't want Natalie to have to carry. I mean, her. Let's not get it twisted. You know when I did it and when Natalie did it. I just want to be clear on that. I'm getting better, but yeah, no. So it's fun. So maybe that's a time where like when I finished twisting her hair and it was done and she was okay with it, like she didn't like, I don't want to be seen outside, like I think that was a moment where I felt like kind of sexy, like I did that right there. I did that.
Now, I can't take any credit for doing hair, but I do take out. My takeout game is crazy, you know. I am in there, right? You know.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, I wash and then I put the beads in, you know, like I'm very involved in that part. And so like if it's a standard that we have, we want to make sure that our kids can mirror that as well.
For sure.
So I'm just really appreciative for this conversation. With that, let's go to our takeout boxes. What are our major takeaways from this conversation? Let's start with our guests and then Jackie, and then I'll close.
One of the takeaways that I got immediately is I still want a boy. I still want a boy. You know, like, and but on a different note though, I have created a relationship with the son through my writings. I have children's stories. I have children's stories that I have a 3rd book coming out, I think next month, and it's about a father-son relationship based on stress management, and it's called Have a Good Day. It's very emotional, very sentimental, very like dad just loving on the son. And I have another book that's coming out probably in the fall that talks about a father-son relationship with the son's relationship with the dark, and then the father having a different relationship with the dark and helping his son have a healthy relationship with the dark. And so so I still have a boy. I still have one. It's, you know, it's my mind, but I still have that relationship that I can still curate through these stories that I share with the world. But one of the takeaways, I think most important takeaways, is that these conversations are so necessary. You know, they are so necessary. And I think just hearing Jasper, just relating to another father, another healthy father, just gives me fuel and motivation to just keep doing what we do, you know, and changing that narrative of what the expectation of how we see Black fathers is. It's amazing to see that shift and to, you know, encounter amazing fathers like Jasper and sharing this platform with us, you know, so I'm grateful for that as well.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. My takeout box, I just like, so I was prepping for a really dark conversation, right? I just thought because it was about Black fatherhood, it was gonna be very heavy and somber. Because it can be, right? Like one of the more revelatory moments for me, and so this is, you know, as having a son, I remember I was doing some research for a paper I was working on Trayvon, and I stumbled on this 14 to 34 window, where it's like the most likely for you to have a run-in with the police and is from 14 to 34. And I I realized that I was exiting the window as Caleb was entering the window.
Wow.
Right. And it makes Black fatherhood hard sometimes when you know there are elements that are out of your control. As much as you love and as much as you hug and as much as you kiss and as much as you nurture, like he still has to be in the world. And I remember he was coming up to the door. I forgot he left the house. I think he was taking out the trash or something. And he was walking up to the door and I saw a glimpse of him through the window. I was like, who is this grown man like coming to the, I was like prepping for somebody to knock at the door and I realized it was Caleb. And because he's always been like my little son, like that's what he's always been. And I got a glimpse of like how the world potentially sees him now. And and I shed a few tears because it's just like he's out there. And so that makes for a very difficult situation because that anytime he leaves or like that, he has to grapple with a world that does not love him the same. And so what I appreciated about this conversation was all the laughs and the joy and the and just being prompted to remember that this is just as much a part of it as the other part is, right? There is laughter, there is joy, there is growth, there's the positive stuff. So my takeaway from this conversation was definitely that like I didn't expect to laugh this much. I didn't expect to have this much joy in this conversation, and that's my takeaway, and I'm really glad that I was able to be a part of it.
That's great.
Yeah. I mean, I'm leaving with some joy and definitely some appreciation for you all, particularly for reminding me that y'all are still like in it as fathers, as people. And I think about that because I'm wrapping up my dissertation, I'm preparing to move. I have this wedding that has been being planned for forever, pandemic bride here. And, just have like life things that are going on. So some days I look at my to-do list and I'm like, man, I got like 20 things I need to do. And, instead of doing these 20 things, I'm like, what's on Netflix? Let me watch, it's just, y'all reminded me how easy it is to just check out, to just be like, there's all this stuff going on that feels heavy, that feels important, and I just can't deal with it right now. So let me just watch, I don't know, an episode of something, or maybe a movie, or maybe several episodes. But that to me is just kind of parallel to the story that we hear often about Black fathers, of just, it's easy to check out, and so they do. And so I have an appreciation of y'all waking up every day and just like choosing not to check out, because I think that's inspirational, not just on the fatherhood tip, which I appreciate that on the fatherhood tip, but just in life, like to wake up and not check out. I also have a deep appreciation for the introspection that y'all bring to fatherhood, because I think it's easy to play the role of the father who does what he needs to do as far as like making money or bringing whatever kind of resources into the home, and then leaving the heavy lifting.
Hey,
Hi, girl.
Aww. It's good to see them.
Yes. Wait, are y'all all matching? Are y'all all wearing yellow?
They are. They wearing yellow too.
Hey,
See,
Robert.
did y'all plan this?
Hey, Lily.
Go on the other side.
Hey. Hey, Mia. I know she's still there.
That's Mia
Oh my
Oh
God.
Look at your beautiful, beautiful little children.
They're so adorable. Y'all are so beautiful, so chocolately, and
I love the yellow today. Yes.
I love it. Yes.
They can't hear you, by the way. I got the headphones.
Oh,
okay.
Well, please
Tell them I said they're beautiful.
Yes.
They said that you guys are beautiful. Say thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And we love your yellow.
Yes.
Thank you.
I guess they can hear. Okay.
So yeah, I appreciate you bringing your girls into the shot so that we could see and hear them. But yeah, I appreciate the introspection that y'all bring, because it's, I think, easy and expected for fathers to just be there, and that is counted as showing up. And y'all are really thoughtful about what showing up means. So I appreciate that.
Mm. And I'm thankful for again just the conversation, like Matt was saying. And I'm also glad that you all experienced it a little bit more lighter than I did, because I'm still like super heavy. Y'all, like, we laughing and stuff, and while y'all laughing, I'm like, there's just so much inside of me, because I'm just like hearing the stories, and I'm like, there's so many stories that I'm recalling as well, and things that I want to process, and things that I, you know, like with my dad not being here anymore, it's kind of just like I can't have these conversations with him. And it just makes me, it reminds me, kind of like something that Matt said, it's just like, you still have that desire, like even for his dad today, it's just like, as like, the thing about, and this is another reason why I don't have pets or kids yet, but it's just like, they don't go away until you're gone. Okay. So it's just like, once you become a father or a parent, you are that until the children are always your children, always. Like, and you will always, like, that father, mother, parent relationship, it doesn't matter how old you are, that they're still your parents, you know? And so that desire for parenting, or that desire for that relationship, doesn't go away either. So you can be 80 something and have 100-year-old parent, and it's still like, that's your dad, that's your mom, you know, it doesn't go away. And so it just, for me, it's that reminder of, you know, how forever it is, in a sense, like that relationship, and how that also means that it's never too late. Well, until I guess it's too late. I guess it's never too late to work on it. But even, I guess, even after, it just also makes me wonder how I can continue to work through my relationship with my dad, and the concept of parenting and all, and fathering, even after he's passed, you know, and the continual like empathizing with him. And I think we were in such a good place where we were continuing to work on that. And so I think that's what made it particularly challenging when he actually did pass. And so it's like, it just makes me think about like how I can continue to work through different things, and kind of just appreciate the stories of fathers today. And I don't know, I guess I'm still just thinking through that. I'm just kind of so heavy, and I'm just like, oh, parenting is so important. So it's just like, you do what you can while you can. And, you know, I really respect you both for just like really doing the hard work, like Jackie was saying, of introspection, because that's hard work. And it's you have to really like work with, like, be honest with yourself and be vulnerable. And that's so important. And even like a few times in this conversation, Jasper, you were just like, I'm going to be vulnerable for a moment. And that takes courage, you know. This isn't light work. And so I just respect that you both have taken courage to be honest with yourselves, and honest about what you bring into your children's lives by way of being their father. So yeah, it's a lot of heaviness that I'm still stuck with, but I'm glad that we had this conversation, because I hope that it can help other people just process their lives, and also themselves as fathers. So that is it for our takeout box section. Thank you all so much for joining us. This has been such a rich conversation. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about a lot of different things, and had the gamut of emotions. If folks want to continue being in touch with y'all, how do they find you? Like, what are the handles? What are the websites? How do people get in touch with you?
They can definitely reach me on social media at Matt, M-A-T, Genius, Jeanius. That's my name, and last name like shifted a little bit. Genius, Jeanius, Matt Genius. Or on the therapeutic side, they can find me at Beachstone Counseling. Beachstone Counseling, they can find that on all the social media sites, and there's a website, beachstonecounseling.com, as well. And of course, go get them books on Amazon.
Read.
Look at them books, please. You know, they are a great read, and my stories are both gifts for parents and children. You know, there's always a story, a nugget in there for the parents and the child as well. So you can find both books. One book is called go to school every day, which is very relevant to the time we're in right now.
Ooh.
Trying to get these kids back into the school system,
Mm.
in person. So Go to School Every Day is one of those books that you can find on Amazon. And the second book, also relevant for the time, is called When the Tablets Ran Away, which is a book addressing the addictive personality, or the addictive stances that our kids can have with, with electronic devices as well, and the parents as well. Like I said, there's always nuggets in there for the parents as well. And then the book that's coming out next month that you can find on Amazon is called Have a Good Day, which deals with stress management and children.
These are good. For folks listening, if you don't have kids, something that I have done in the past is I've purchased kids books, particularly ones with Black characters, and donated them to our, to the local elementary school.
Okay.
So, just support. I'm glad to have a new book, several new books to support. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
I'm not too heavy on social. I mean, I'm on Facebook, so Jasper St Bernard. If you have to if you want to get in touch with me, I've thought about getting on Twitter, and it's just every time something happens, I'm like, it's not, you don't need that in your life. And so so I'm on Facebook, and if you could reach out to the Street Academy, and Jackie can put you in touch with me. That's my friend, so there's that way.
Yes. Well, thank you both for spending some time with us, giving us some insight. Appreciate your thoughts, appreciate who you are, appreciate y'all being with us. And that has been another episode of Street Academy Podcast. You can find us streaming on all of the various podcast apps. And you can also find us at Street Academy Podcast on all of the things. So,
yes, one foot in the academy and one foot in the street.
Man, do I get John's line? Are all hearts and mind clear?
Wait, talk about it though. I wanted to plug one other thing, Matt, because you can see Matt and his girls in action on YouTube because they have a series, and because their names create an acronym, alarm. And so Matt is being like this little evil character. He's like a ninja. It's just the greatest thing. And if you ever just need some good stuff to watch and see a Black father interacting with his children, it is so fun to watch, and it's just beautiful. And so what is it? Can you say what that information is, Matt?
Sure. It's called The Adventures of ALRM. ALRM, like she says, is the acronym for our girl's name. Amelia, Lillian, Malin, and Robin, but we switch the R and the M to create alarm. And you can find that on Haitian Preservation Academy on YouTube. And then you can look for the playlist called The Adventures of ALRM. And you'll have 3 episodes. We haven't shot any episode as of late, but they're coming soon. But it's really cool. It's something that we did during the pandemic to really normalize their anxiety and their fears about what was going on. So we created our own world inside the house that they can escape.
Nice.
Yeah, it's so cute. It's so much fun. And Matt, I don't know who you were modeling this after, if it was like the Power Rangers with the like super dramatic kind of like I've sat there just laughing because I just enjoyed it so much. So I look forward to the next episode, Matt.
Yeah, coming soon. Definitely.
Coming soon. Yeah. Sitting near you. All right, and we're back. Okay, yes. So Jackie, do John's line.
Are all hearts and minds clear? I didn't say it as clear. Wait, let me do it again. Are all hearts and minds clear?
Yes.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yes. This was great.
All right.
Bye, guys. Now we're gonna stop recording. And
got their feet upon the neck of the haters, the game and the devil like came in.
All right, y'all. That was the last part of our fatherhood conversation. I hope you have, dried a couple of those tears, but I also hope that y'all, were inspired.
To cry up.
Just bring it in, but I hope y'all also took a lot of inspiration because we all were inspired by this episode.
Yeah.
Shout out to the fathers, shout out to the Black fathers. We love y'all, we see y'all, we appreciate y'all. And that's it for this episode.
Thank y'all so much for rocking with us. We out.
Peace up, A-Town.